Matthew Henry, The Pleasantness of a Religious Life, Chapter 1. It is a plain truth which we have here laid down, and there is little in it that needs explication. It were well for us if we would but as readily subscribe to the certainty of it as we apprehend the sense and meaning of it. Nor will any complain that it is hard to be understood, but those who know no other pleasures than those of sense, and relish no other, and therefore resolve not to give credit to it. Those who think, how can this be that there should be pleasure in piety, will be ready to question what is the meaning of this doctrine, and to call it a hard saying. You know what pleasure is. I hope you know something what the pleasure of the mind is, a pleasure which the soul has the sensation of. And do you not know something what piety is, a due regard to God above us, and having the eyes of the soul ever directed unto him? Then you know what I mean when I say that there is an abundance of real pleasure and satisfaction in the ways of religion and godliness. But to help you a little in the understanding of it, and to prevent mistakes, observe first that I speak of true piety, and of that as far as it goes. Number 1, hypocrites are very much strangers to the delights and pleasures of religion. Nay, they are altogether so, for it is a joy which those strangers do not intermeddle with. Counterfeit piety can never bring true pleasure. He that acts a part upon a stage, though it be the part of one that is never so pleasant, though he may humor the pleasantness well enough, he doth not experience it. The pleasures of God's house lie not in the outer courts, but within the veil. None know what the peace of God means but those that are under the dominion and operation of his grace. Nor can any that deny the power of godliness expect to share in the pleasures of it. When wisdom enters into thine heart, takes possession of that, and becomes a living, active principle there, then, and not till then, is it pleasant unto thy soul, Proverbs 2:19. They that aim at no more but the credit of their religion before men justly fall short of the comfort of it in themselves. Hypocrites have other things that they delight in, the satisfactions of the world, the gratifications of sense, which put their mouths out of taste to spiritual pleasures, so that they have no pleasure in them. They that have their hearts upon their marketings are weary of the new moons and the Sabbaths. Amos 8:5. With good reason, therefore, doth Job ask, will the hypocrite delight himself in the Almighty? Chapter 27, verse 10. No. His soul takes its ease in the creature, and returns not to the Creator as its rest and home. Some flashy pleasure a hypocrite may have in religion, from a land fled of sensible affections, who yet has not the least taste of the river of God's pleasures. There were those who delighted to know God's ways, Isaiah 58:2. They met with some pretty notions in them that surprised them and pleased their fancies, but they did not delight to walk in them. The stony ground received the word with joy, and yet received no lasting benefit by it, Luke 8:13. Herod heard John gladly, Mark 6:20. He found something very agreeable in his sermons, and which natural conscience could not but embrace, and yet could not bear to be reproved for his Herodias. A florid preacher such as Ezekiel was, may be to them, as a, quote, very lovely song of one that can play well on an instrument, unquote, Ezekiel 33:32. And yet, at the same time, the word of the Lord, if it touch their consciences and show them their transgressions, is to them a reproach, Jeremiah 6:10. They whose hearts are not right with God in their religion cannot have the pleasure of communion with God, for it is the soul only that converseth with God, and that he communicates himself to. Bodily exercise profiteth little, 1 Timothy 4:8, and therefore pleaseth little. Profiteth little, and therefore pleaseth little. The service of God is a burden and a task to an unsanctified, unrenewed heart. It is out of its element when it is brought into that air, and therefore instead of snuffing it up and saying, "Behold, what a pleasure it is," it snuffs at it and saith, "Behold, what a weariness it is," Malachi 1:13. Nor can they take any pleasure in communing with their own consciences or in their reflections, for these are ready upon all occasions to give them uneasiness, by charging them with that which is disagreeable to their profession, and gives the lie to it. And though they cry, "Peace, peace," to themselves, they have that within them that tells them the God of heaven doth not speak peace to them. And this casts a damp upon all their pleasures, so that their religion itself gives them pain. God himself is a terror to them, and the gospel itself condemns them for their insincerity. And in time of trouble and distress, none are so much afraid as the sinners of Zion. Isaiah 38:14. The secret sinners there, and fearfulness is the greatest surprise of all to the hypocrites that are at ease in Zion. Amos 6:1. And think its strongholds will be their security. And therefore it is that hypocrites cast off religion and discharge themselves of the profession of it, after they have a while disguised themselves with it, because it doth not sit easy, and they are weary of it. Tradesmen that take no pleasure in their business will not stick to it long. No more will those that take no pleasure in their religion. Nor will anything carry us through the outward difficulties of it, but the inward delights of it. If those be wanting, the tree is not watered, and therefore even its leaf will soon wither. Psalm 1:3. The hypocrite will not always call upon God, will not long do it, because he will not delight himself in the Almighty. Job 27:10. And this ought not to be a stumbling block to us. Thus, hypocrites in religion prove apostates from it. And the reason is because they never found it pleasant. They never found it pleasant because they were never sincere in it, which was their fault and not the fault of the religion they professed. Let us therefore take heed and beware of hypocrisy. Luke 12:1. As ever we hope to find pleasure in religion, counterfeit piety hath some other end in view, some other end to serve, than that which is the spring of true delight. They who rest in that hew them out cisterns, Jeremiah 2:13, that can hold but little water, and that dead. Nay, broken cisterns that can hold no water. And how can they expect the pleasure which those have that cleave to and continually draw from the fountain of life and living waters? No. As their principles are, such are their pleasures. As their aims are, such are their joys. They appeal to the world, and to the world they shall go. But let not the credit of religion suffer them, for the sake of those who are only pretenders to it, and so indeed enemies to it. Number 2. It is possible that true Christians may, through their own fault and folly, want very much of the pleasure of religion. And therefore I say, true piety, as far as it goes, is very pleasant, as far as it has its due influence upon us, and is rightly understood and lived up to. We maintain that wisdom's ways are always pleasant, and yet must own that wisdom's children are sometimes unpleasant, and therein come short of justifying wisdom in this matter, as they ought to do. Luke 7:35. And rather give advantage to her accusers, and prejudice to her cause. Either they miss these ways and turn aside out of them, and so lose the pleasure that is to be found in them, or, which is a common case, they refuse to take the comfort which they might have in these ways. They hamper themselves with needless perplexities, make the yoke heavy which Christ has made easy, and that frightful which he designed should be encouraging. They indulge themselves, and then, as Jonah when he was angry, justify themselves in causeless griefs and fears, and think they do well to put themselves into an agony to be very heavy, and sore amazed, and their souls exceeding sorrowful, even unto death, as Christ's was, whereas Christ put himself into such an agony to make us easy. But let not true piety suffer in its reputation because of this. For though it be called a religious melancholy, it is not so. For that is contrary to the very nature and design of religion. While it shelters itself under the color of it, and pretends to take rise from it, it is rather to be called a superstitious melancholy, arising from such a slavish fear of God as the heathens were driven to by their demons and barbarous sacrifices, which is a great injury to the honor of his goodness, as well as a great injury to themselves. If the professors of religion look for that in the world, which is to be had in God only, and that is perfect happiness, or if they look for that in themselves, which is to be had in Christ only, and that is a perfect righteousness, or if they look for that on earth, which is to be had in heaven only, and that is perfect holiness, and then fret and grieve and go mourning from day to day because they are disappointed in their expectations, they may thank themselves. Why seek they the living among the dead? Luke 24:5 and 17. Let but religion, true and pure religion, in all the laws and instances of it, command and prevail, and these tears will soon be wiped away. Let but God's servants take their work before them, allow each principle of their religion its due weight, and each practice of it its due place and proportion, and let them not dash one precept of the gospel any more than one table of the law in pieces against the other. Let them look upon it to be as much their duty to rejoice in Christ Jesus as to mourn for sin, nay, and more, for this is in order to that, and then we shall not fear that their sorrows will in the least shake the truth of our doctrine. For as far as religion is carried, it will carry this character along with it, and further, it cannot be expected.